This is not just a story about a woman who channeled a voice. It marks a turning point in how we understand the mind, time, and reality itself. In 1963, Jane Roberts opened herself to a presence that called itself Seth. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but a non-physical consciousness, with access to knowledge beyond the boundaries of space and matter. Seth referred to itself as a multidimensional energy essence, an awareness that had long outgrown physical form. Through her voice, Seth began to speak, not to predict the future, but to remind us of who we really are. He spoke of consciousness as creator, of simultaneous time, of a self far more vast than the one we see in the mirror. His message was clear. You are not at the mercy of reality. You are shaping it. It was a call to wake up from the dream we mistake for truth. And Jane wasn't just a passive receiver. She questioned, challenged, and studied the voice that came through her, making sure it wasn't just her imagination, but something deeper, more consistent, and far more mysterious. So the question is not who was Seth. The question is, are you ready to remember the part of you that never forgot? From now on, you will hear Seth's profound and insightful statements as he presents them. Let's begin. God is more than the sum of all the probable reality systems he has created. Yet he is present within each of them, without exception. He is in every man and woman, just as he is in every spider, every shadow, and every frog. This is what humanity often finds difficult to accept. God can only be experienced through your own existence, and you experience him, whether you are aware of it or not. However, he is neither masculine nor feminine. I use he only for convenience. The most inescapable truth is that he is not human in any sense, nor is he a personality. Your ideas of personality are far too limited to encompass the multidimensional reality of his existence. The soul is not a finished product. In fact, it is not a product at all, but a process, a continual unfolding. And all that is also neither finished nor unfinished. There are probable gods, as there are probable selves. But all these probable gods are part of what you would call the soul, or identity of all that is, just as your own probable selves are part of your greater soul. All that is aware not only of its own nature, and the nature of all consciousness, but also of its infinite probable gods. Here we enter territory where words begin to fail. The nature of all that is can only be directly felt through the inner senses, or faintly sensed through inspiration and intuition. The miraculous complexity of such a reality cannot be conveyed through words. The soul remains at the center of its being, expanding its abilities in every direction at once, engaged in creative acts that are always valid and meaningful. The system of probable realities reveals new facets of the soul's nature. Over time, this understanding will change existing religious ideas. That is why the nature of good and evil is such an important subject. Put simply, evil does not truly exist, though this may be hard to grasp. It's true that you encounter what seem to be its effects, but the idea that if there is a God, there must be a devil, or that if good exists, evil must too, is like saying that because an apple has a top, it must have a bottom, without realizing both are parts of one whole. Your ideas of growth and development are based on a linear movement toward perfection. Because of this, it's hard to imagine an order that unfolds outward in all directions. Yet a completely perfected God or being would ultimately stifle its creation. Perfection implies a final point, beyond which no further development is possible, where creativity would end. That kind of order would demand predestination, with every part bound to a fixed pattern, unable to evolve. But within true order, there is freedom. And it is the freedom of creativity, the essence of all that is, that ensures an infinite, ever-renewing future. All that is inexhaustible, Infinity lies in simultaneous action, in a way you cannot yet comprehend. All that is alive even in the smallest part of itself, conscious, for example, in every molecule, and grants all its parts and creations their own capacities. These serve as inspiration, impulses, principles, and inner guidance through which they shape themselves and their worlds. As you know, only a portion of your total self is known to you. So when you imagine a supreme being, you picture a masculine personality with traits you admire, projecting onto God the qualities you find powerful or desirable. This imagined God has changed over the centuries, reflecting humanity's evolving self-image. In the past, God was often seen as cruel and powerful, qualities people feared and envied, especially in their struggle to survive. In this way, humanity created God in its own image, but in a reality inconceivably vast and orderly. The old ideas of God lose their meaning. Even the idea of a supreme being becomes distorted, burdened with too much human baggage. If I told you that God is an idea, you would misunderstand, because you don't yet grasp what such an idea truly is, nor the dimensions or energy behind it. You tend to believe in ideas the way you believe in physical objects. So if I say God is an idea, you might think he is less than real, without substance or power. But your physical body is the materialization of your idea of yourself. Without that idea, your body wouldn't exist. And yet, that idea is often the last thing you notice. It is the original energy of that idea that sustains your physical form. Ideas, then, are far more powerful than you understand. If you can begin to accept that your own existence is multidimensional, that you live within a field of infinite probabilities, then you may glimpse, however faintly, the reality behind the word God. And then you might understand why it is nearly impossible to express the true nature of God in human language. God, or all that is first and foremost a creator, not just of the physical universe, but of an endless variety of probable realities, far beyond what you now know. All that is part of all probabilities. Do you think reality ends where your vision ends? You must train yourself to look between events, between objects, within yourself, in those moments when it seems nothing is happening. Pay attention to the events that make no sense. They often point to much larger, invisible ones. You don't yet understand the true nature of matter. You perceive it only at a certain stage. Using your terms, and speaking simply, let's say there are other forms of matter beyond what you now see. This also involves the behavior of atoms and molecules, which appear in your universe only at specific stages. You perceive their activity only within certain vibrational rhythms. When scientists examine atoms, they study only how they behave within your system, but their broader reality escapes your science entirely. Some of you understand there are spectra of light, just as there are spectra of matter. Your physical reality is not especially dense compared to some others. The dimensions you assign to matter are only slight indications of the vast range of possible dimensions. You must realize that each mental act is a reality, one for which you are responsible. This is why you find yourselves in this specific concrete system. If you create a devil, then that devil becomes real for you, and for others who also believe in it. Because of the energy given to it, it can develop a degree of its own consciousness. But it has no power for those who don't believe in it, who don't feed it energy through belief. It is, in other words, a superlative hallucination. Those who believe in hell and think it is meant for them can indeed experience it, though not forever, since no soul stays ignorant eternally. What's missing in those who hold such beliefs is a deep trust in consciousness, in the soul, and in all that is. Instead of focusing on what they call good, they are filled with fear of what they call evil. Hallucinations like these arise from fear and self-imposed limits. The idea of the devil is a mass projection of fear. Mass, because many people contribute to it. Yet throughout time, there have always been those who rejected that principle. Some very ancient religions understood the hallucinatory nature of the devil. In those times, people couldn't imagine a god without also imagining a devil. You weave networks of psychic reality that merge into physical reality. You don't weave them alone, but together, since your thoughts interact with others. You are responsible for your thoughts, and you must learn the power of thought and emotion. But this should fill you with joy, the joy of creation. Once you understand that your thoughts form reality, you are no longer a slave to events. You simply need to learn the methods. Atoms and molecules, however small, also carry their own consciousness and responsibility. Yet there is a part of consciousness that perceives freely, moved by a playful, creative impulse. Thanks to its creative aspect, it can perceive joyfully, without obligation. Even the very air around you sings with its own bright and cheerful consciousness. You are unfamiliar with that lighter burden of awareness, the one that often escapes you. You fear death so deeply that you dare not disconnect consciousness, afraid no one will reconnect it. I don't define good or evil as you do. You think what is good is soft, and what is bad is violent. Since to you, violence and destruction are the same. By that logic, a soft voice must be benign, and a loud one evil. A strong desire becomes bad. You are afraid to project your thoughts and intentions outward, because deep down, you think power is diabolical. But I tell you, this universe is good. It knows its own vitality. That vitality is in you, and you can nurture it freely. Your own nature is good, and you can trust it. When I speak, I focus my energy, but not toward this room as a destination, because in your terms, this room does not exist for me. In fact, in your terms, it doesn't exist for you either. You only pretend to agree that it exists. We are not meeting in a place, not in space or time. The real encounter here has nothing to do with this room, or the people you believe yourselves to be. You know the room is an illusion, that you are in a kind of trance, just as you are in psychological time. If this life is a trance, then you can redirect your consciousness and begin to perceive the greater realities that exist now, in the present. You can become aware of your greater identity, just as I am. Do you think reality consists only of the actions you have chosen to carry out? What about the ones you didn't act on? Do they simply vanish? The path you didn't take might seem like a non-event, but in truth, every thought becomes reality, and every possibility is explored. All action begins as a mental act. This is the foundation of reality. Every mental act is valid. It exists. It cannot be erased. Just because you don't experience them physically doesn't mean they lack strength or endurance. Your inability to perceive them doesn't make them any less real. If you once wanted to become a doctor but chose another path, then you are a doctor in another probable reality. If you have talents you are not using here, you are using them somewhere else. These parallel events don't reduce the soul's validity, they expand it. The soul is a multidimensional and infinite act, in which even the slightest probability finds a way to become real. It's a creative field generating endless dimensions, where every possible realization unfolds, and your existence is woven into this vast web, too complex for the three-dimensional intellect to fully grasp. These probable selves are all part of your greater identity, the soul. If you are unaware of them, it's only because you focus exclusively on physical reality and treat it as the only standard of truth. But each probability gives rise to others, and every conscious act brings with it an infinite set of unconscious ones that also seek realization. Everything you do reflects in some way across your probable selves, and their actions echo back into your own experience. If you are open and receptive, you can benefit from their knowledge, skills, and understanding. This happens naturally in sleep. What you call sudden inspiration is often the result of tuning into another version of yourself, one who has already tested the idea. You bring it through and make it real here. Ideas you have conceived but never used may be put into action by your probable selves. And of course, to them, you are the alternate self. Through the inner senses, all these selves are aware of their role in the total being. When the ego is quiet, communication between these parts flows. In dreams, you may catch glimpses of paths not taken. They may seem like fantasy, but they could just as easily be real events occurring in another reality system. The past itself has existed in countless versions, but you have only lived one of them. But by changing your memory of a past event now, you can alter both its nature and its effects on yourself and on others. Suppose a past event disturbed you deeply. Don't try to erase it. Instead, reimagine it. Replace it with something beneficial. Do this with deep emotional involvement, and repeat it often. It is not a matter of deceiving yourself. The version you choose becomes a valid probable event, one that truly occurred, though it wasn't the version you originally focused on. What separates events isn't time, it's perception. You experience events one at a time, but time itself is a psychic framework, an organization of experience. The beginning and end of events, birth and death, are simply dimensions, like height, width, or depth. You believe you are moving toward an end, but that end is part of a much larger personal event. This is how multidimensional reality works. A being, an entity or soul, can never fully appear in three-dimensional space, but part of it can be projected here, extend through time, occupy space, and live temporarily in physical form. The entity sees the full picture, the entire personal event, all at once. To the entity, time is just one more aspect of experience, but its greater reality can't fit within the narrow framework of three-dimensional life. The entity, your true multidimensional self, knows all of its experiences, and that knowledge is available to all parts of itself, including the physical self you know now. Eventually, all these parts will become fully conscious, and when they do, that awareness will transform how you see yourself, expanding your nature, your consciousness, and your understanding of existence. The levels of consciousness we have described might feel distant from your everyday waking state, but these boundaries are arbitrary. These states are qualities of your being and directions your soul moves toward. Even your ordinary waking mind holds hints of them, reflections, shadows, signs. Your waking consciousness is mostly limited by habit, so you rarely notice these signs consistently. Still, they are always present, offering glimpses into those other levels and directions. You may often see images or symbols in your mind that feel out of place, so you dismiss them. But if you were to focus on these signs, you could follow them into deeper states of awareness. There are many levels of consciousness active during waking life that you don't usually recognize. Each one is real in its own way and knows its own form of reality. Right now, you use a form of consciousness that focuses on only one point at a time, leaving out other states where the rest of your being is also engaged. Each of those states creates its own reality, just as you create yours. Reality is a byproduct of consciousness itself. This creates a challenge for the ego, especially early on. The ego looks for answers outside itself, because managing the physical world is its role. But it also senses a deep connection to parts of the self it cannot fully control or understand. At some level, the ego knows its true foundation lies in the inner being. As the ego matures, it begins searching for external confirmations of what the inner self already knows. The inner self supports the ego by translating inner truths into physical terms the ego can understand, then projecting them outward. Once these truths appear in the external world, the ego finds them easier to accept. Until you are honest and conscious with yourself, you cannot truly connect with others. You will project your fears and biases onto them. You won't be able to help others because you remain insecure within. You shape the reality you know, both individually and collectively. To change your world, you must first change your thoughts. Be aware of what you tell yourself every moment, because that becomes your reality. You project your ideas outward, yet often act as if they aren't yours, as if they came from somewhere else. But they are yours. So take the time to understand what your thoughts and feelings really are, and don't fear them. What we call balance is actually a dance of constant imbalances, a focused consciousness made of ongoing movement. In this state, not all elements can be known at once, because new ones are always arising. Not just physical elements, but psychological characteristics of consciousness. These elements are always combining and shifting. You are not the same person you were 10 minutes ago. Physically, psychologically, spiritually, psychically, you are different. And 10 minutes from now, you will be different again. To deny this is to try to force consciousness into a rigid form, a shape it was never meant to take. It would be like trying to create a flawless psychological landscape by applying fixed rules, an impossible task. You must stop identifying entirely with your ego and recognize that you can perceive far more than your ego allows. Imagine you are holding a flashlight. That flashlight is your consciousness. You can turn it in many directions, but instead, you have grown used to pointing it along a single narrow path. You have forgotten there are other directions to explore. All you need to do is swing the flashlight elsewhere. When you do, the path you have been focusing on will momentarily go dark, but new realities and images will appear. I hope this information helps you, and always remember, you hold immense power within, far beyond the physical world. You are here to awaken to it. Thank you for listening.